For week 8, this is what we're going to cover. Creating a blog page and creating posts, otherwise known as articles, could be otherwise known as a news item, an update, something of the week, a tip of the week, a new recipe. There are so many different reasons to use blogging functionality, and I do not want you guys getting hung up on the fact that it's a blog, and a lot of the blogs maybe that you've encountered are just like narratives about what people are doing in their lives, and it's hard for you to make your life more interesting than somebody else's. You can use that tool to create narratives about whatever you're doing with your business. Okay, so I'm going to stress the importance of that and get into that a little bit in the dashboard, and then we're going to talk about categories and tags and how they're so important. It's almost to the point where if you're going to make a blog post and not categorize it and add tags, it's not even worth doing. These are great tools that will further optimize the text content inside the blog post itself. And then finally, I'm going to go back to menus, and the reason I go back to menus in this lecture is because once you start to create categories, there are cool things you can do with the URL that will take you directly to a category in a WordPress site. And you can actually create little mini menus with your categories so people can navigate around in your postings. They don't have to use the widgets. You can put it right into your main menu. So that'll be a bit of menu review too for you guys that screwed that up in the test. I felt when I was going around that most people were doing that all right. But okay, so this is a repeat slide. As you know, I borrow a large part of this from the WordPress community. Okay, and WordPress started as a blogging tool, so there's a lot of information about blogging, what it is. It's short for weblog, we know that. Okay, it's an ongoing chronicle. It's a continuing story. Okay, diary type commentary. I like that they put that in there. And this is the kind of thing. Remember that video we watched with Jesse Schill, however you say his last name, the gaming guy? How he was going on and on about how people are all hooked on reality now, and they like to know what people are doing in their real lives. We don't want to see the celebrities being celebrities. We actually want to see them being normal like us. It's even more interesting that way, right? This is one of the reasons blogging is so attractive. Like, show us your business, show us what you're doing, but tell us the real story. Tell us what's really going on. Talk to us about dissatisfied customers and how you help them. Talk to us about satisfied customers. Maybe use the blog section of your website as purely as a testimonial section. So if you don't feel like writing a diary, there's still going to be a reason to use it. It's typically presented as a list of entries in chronological order. You'll usually see the newest stuff on top. And blogs range from personal to political. They can focus on a narrow subject or a whole range of subjects. And again, it doesn't have to be a blog. You can use the blog functionality just to make weekly updates on what you're doing in a store or something. Most blogs, however, do focus on a particular topic. You'll see tons of blogs on web design. Some of the Mac issues that we ran into with XAMPP, I know some of the students had found the answers for us built into blogs. They were typed out in blogs. We got the text, we fixed it. Some are more eclectic. They present links to other types of sites. Some blogs are actually just like hubs for other resources. They save time and create efficiencies for you guys to go out and find different things all in one place. Others are like personal journals, right? One of my favorite ones that I like to show, and I think I've already brought it up in another lecture, is that one with the story about the girl who had the boyfriend that made the comment that she makes such awesome sandwiches, not 3,300. And she's only 300 sandwiches away from being engaged. So she started a blog on it. So this is a site that's very heavily blog driven. And I mentioned recipes already. So this is a recipe blog. So each post would be a different recipe. And she started with sandwiches and now gets into all sorts of different stuff. The whole thing just took off because she got a lot of press given the backline of the story, which was kind of a unique story. So that's a great example of a blog-driven site. Okay. However, just because your site isn't blog-driven doesn't mean that you don't have to use blogs. In the previous slide, I mentioned creating a blog page or creating posts. You can set up a page that you allocate your blog to, and we've done this previously. We're going to review that again today. Or if the site is purely blog-driven, you just leave the front page set to be your latest blog postings. Okay? So generally speaking, blogs tend to have some stuff in common. And this is even if you're not using a blog per se as a diary or chronicle type of tool, you're using it just to post new products and tell people bits and pieces of information that's been going on with your business. The main stuff usually is listed in order with the newest on top. You can change that in the WordPress settings, but I wouldn't, because people want to see what they're used to, right? Often the articles are organized into categories. When they aren't, it makes it harder to navigate the content. An archive of older articles is always going to be available. So even if only your latest 10 posts show on the front page, you can search with any WordPress site previous content. Okay, it's a way people can leave comments, right? If you don't want people leaving comments on like a static page, like why would you have people leaving comments on your contact page, right? Whoa, sweet looking phone number. Like, this is cool. Like, it's, WordPress is very functional for users on the other side, but that doesn't mean you have to leave every single component in your website opened up to comments. Most of the time, static pages don't allow comments. And I've shown you how to turn that on and off. Blog posting is a great way to allow comments. Okay, sometimes, I'm going to skip that one for a second. Sometimes blogs have feeds, like they have news feeds that come in through a blog, and then people comment on the news feeds. I've seen kiteboarding blogs that have constant weather feeds being updated all the time. Some blogs have additional features beyond this stuff. So some blogs have videos built into them. Okay, some blogs are vlogs, which starting with a V would stand for video log instead of weblog. The blog roll, okay? A list of links to other related sites. WordPress refers to this as a blog roll, but a lot of people that I've run into in the web world typically refer to the blog roll as the page that shows all your latest posts and the collection of links within your site that connect to the other posts. It's kind of the same thing. I don't really know, but you guys, I never test you on definitions like this. I'm just trying to teach you at this point functionality. So here's how it works. And it's not going to look just like this. This is just like a hierarchy diagram that shows you how the blog posting system works. Let me make that a little bigger for you. So every time you make a post, and this is where I'll go back and talk about HTML sites a little bit, because when I was still primarily creating HTML sites, to have this kind of functionality in a website, you either had to add in a PHP blogging tool, or you had to create your own PHP code, and it was just an enormous amount of work to actually get all of your posts to be categorically added into like a catalog of information. That's all based on PHP code. With WordPress, it's already done for us. With an HTML site, you're having to like create an extra page, create this. It all happens automatically in WordPress. With the HTML sites where I did want a blog section, I used WordPress back in like 06 to 08 to add a blog as a section of that website. So the website itself was an HTML site, because at that point I was still doubting the optimization capabilities of WordPress, but I wanted the blog functionality so that I would automatically have the ability to search within the WordPress blog. Okay, every WordPress site comes with search functionality automatically. If you don't have that in an HTML site, you have to install the Google custom search engine, which is a big pain in the butt, and it's all sorts of code in different places. WordPress just happens automatically. If you have it set this way, all the posts you put in will go over top of the last post. Everything will automatically be archived as soon as it leaves the blog roll page. Any post that you create, when it goes to the blog page, you can click on it and it'll go to the post page. You don't have to create all these links in all these places. That's what you'd have to do with an HTML site, the kind of site we learn to make in the web workshop. So this is why WordPress is so powerful, because one of the most important things you can do with a website is update it with fresh and new and juicy content frequently. Okay? Search engines love that. The SERP loves you for that. It'll put you higher up in the rankings because you have new content on your page. I mean, it's about a lot more than that. It's about the best possible matches with keyword phrases in a variety of places. It's about how long people have been there before and how long they stayed there. It's about whether or not the content on your site is duplicated from another site. There's all sorts of stuff involved in an algorithm like Google's algorithm, and it's changing constantly. They actually have loading speed pretty high up in their algorithm now, like quite high up, and it's always changing. But it's still, content is still king in this list. A lot of these factors are going to come back to content. So using this blogging tool within the context of a WordPress site, within the environment of a WordPress site, can help you optimize the site just by having the extra content there. And it's nice that it just all works for you. You categorize things, you add tags that are more specific. Categories are like the broad-based subject that your post would fall into. Tags are like the specific items that you're speaking about within that category. And I'll get into the definitions of those as we go further down the slides, but you don't have those in an HTML site. You have to create all this within the code, and it's just, this is why WordPress is so awesome. And even the ones that aren't as I don't want to say adaptable, but WordPress is very capable in terms of what it allows you to do. You can do so much with it when you're using WordPress.org. Tumblr is a great blog platform, but you can't really optimize it on your own per se. There aren't plugins that help you enhance the optimization. But in general, just from the way it's built, Tumblr sites still do come up in a lot of searches because of the content. So here, we're going to have the content, plus we're going to be able to optimize it. And you don't just optimize the content within the post by putting the proper keyword phrases in there that connect that user to the subject matter that you're talking about. You can put that into the categories and tags as well. And you can have descriptions for the categories and the tags. So this is, and before they had the plugins that allowed you to do this, you had to code all this into a WordPress site. And that's when I was still kind of shying away from WordPress. Now it's all automated, so makes it really easy for you. So here's what we already know. And when you go into settings, and I'll jump into one of my WordPress sites here. I can just use my regular site. Okay. Why would that not be working? I mean, I know why, but it's not working because I always turn XAMPP off so it doesn't use up overhead on my computer. So let's get that started. Okay, if you're on GoDaddy, you'll never have to worry about that again. Okay, there we go, up and running. Still logged in. So in the dashboard, we've covered this several times. I just keep putting it in lectures over and over again. And I bet a bunch of people still miss it on the test. Reading. Under the reading section, you have the option to have your latest posts be the automatic front page of your site, or identify another page as the front page and then use a blank page you've created as your blog page. I named it blog for the purpose of what I'm doing here. I could have named it locations if this is a site purely about kiteboarding spots that I'm going to talk about in my blog. So that is what I'm making reference to on this slide. Okay. Now, very quickly here, I'm just going to undo some of the stuff I did in the last section so you get the same. Okay, so this is a skill that we've established, and you guys should be pretty comfortable with that. Now, in this particular slide, it says go to pages, make a new page, title the page something relevant to blogs, and then we're going to go and connect it to the blog. So this is my suggestion for setting up like a standard business website, is not to have the blog page as your front page, which is automatically the way almost every WordPress theme is given to you. When you load it up in the browser, the blog page is the front page. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do it that way. If you're going to run a blog-driven website, then maybe the blog page should be your front page. But what I'm suggesting here is that you do what I've already done in a previous lecture. You go in and you set up a page called blog. So if I go to pages, I've got this page called blog, and I go and I edit it, and there's nothing in it. Okay, even if I put that stuff in there, remember I showed you, as soon as you make that the page that shows your blog posts, none of the content in it is going to matter. So you can leave it completely blank. And for the purpose of what I'm doing here, I don't have to call it blog. I'm going to call it locations and gear. Okay, usually one-word titles are a little better, but it's going to go with something like that just to demonstrate it doesn't have to be blog, but it could be. And then you go and in your settings, if it's not already done, you allocate that to be the page where blog goes. Okay, now as a side note, and we're going to talk more about menus at the end here, if you change the title of pages, you need to be aware that that's probably not going to change in your menu. So if you go into Appearance Menus, no, that one did. Okay, it depends on the theme. You can also, I'm going to call that Locations and Gear. I can force that to be blog in my menu if I want the menu item to be shorter, and it would still be Locations and Gear as the page title. So lots of different things you can do there. So I'm going to actually do that just so it's still called blog in the menu, but I have better keywords in the page title. They're not great keywords. They don't say anything about kiteboarding or kite surfing, but I'm just showing you an example. And I'm also going to remove these because I'm going to redo that near the end of the lecture and show you what those are for. Okay, so I've got a pretty simple page here. This was just an example page. I'm working on my site generally right now, and I'm going to start with some posts, okay? Obviously, I'm just throwing this stuff together. This doesn't look like a completed website, would even be close to looking. But here, once I get that set up, then when I go to post and start creating posts, save that, they will automatically pop up on that page that I have set up as blog in the menu, and it's called Locations and Gear in the page title. If I go back to settings and reading, I can actually set how many posts come up there. Okay, and I can scroll down. I can like scale that down. I can make it show more. Okay, if I go to there's a couple different things you can do here. So save changes there. Under writing, you can actually set a default category, so that just in case you're in the habit of forgetting to make a category, it would automatically have one. But when you get a WordPress site, typically it doesn't have anything but uncategorized. Okay, so you need to be aware of that. And then down here, automatically close comments on articles. You can set that to stay open all the time. Users must be registered. Anyone can post a comment. There's a bunch of stuff related to comments here, and I don't get too into comments in today's lecture, but it's all pretty intuitive. Like, you can go there and the checkboxes tell you pretty much exactly what you're allowing. So if you go to discussion, you can just not allow people to post comments on new articles across the entire site, and then individually when you create articles you can choose whether or not you want to allow comments. I usually accept the default on this stuff, but I might increase that. I think you can put it up to like you could have it sitting there forever, just so people see the comments. You can have auto messages sent to these people. So the comment functionality here is pretty good. And you'll notice that I turn comments off. When I go to make a post now, I'm going to go to one of the posts I've already made, because I made a couple posts and then I never bothered to categorize this stuff. So this isn't good, because that's not good optimization. So I'm going to go back. I'm in text view here. I'll go to visual. Now, just out of curiosity, all I see down here is the slug. If I go to screen options, there's going to be an option for discussion. If I check that box and scroll down, I can then decide to allow comments. So I've turned comments off for the site, but by default, and because this one was already created with comments allowed, it was on. Okay, so I can turn this on or off per item now. So I'm going to allow comments. And right now I'm just going to focus on the categories and tags. This is a post I already made. There's not enough content in it. That's beside the point. The worst thing about it right now is the fact that it's not in a proper category. So I know, because I planned this out in my project plan, that I'm going to have this website set up where I categorize all my posts based on the location I'm going to. And the broad-based category is going to be the lake that I'm in. So I'm going to go and add a new category, and I'm going to call it Lake Huron, because that's where I am right there. And I'm going to click Add. And then I'm going to take myself out of Uncategorized. And then I'm going to add another category, because you can make categories within categories, which is also quite useful for your readers to figure out where they're going. I can be Southern Lake Huron. And put that as a child in that same category. Okay, then based on the content, and I would have more content here, like here, Sloan is seen riding at his local break just a couple kilometers, and I'm not going to sit here and write through this video. I just want to show you guys what I'm talking about with tags. North of Grand Bend, south, sorry. Okay. Once you get south of the pier, south of the main pier, Grand Bend kiteboarding gets a little smoother and less ridden with rogue waves and constant chop. So there's this whole situation going on there where I have a lot of buddies that insist on riding right at Main Beach so they can go straight out, do a little jump, come back in, go straight out, do a little jump. It's just the same thing over and over again. I like to ride waves, so I actually often go downwind through distance, and the worst spot to ride is right by the pier because all these waves come in. So I would take a whole article's worth of stuff and talk about this, and I would have innuendo in it, meaning I would have opinions, and I would be outspoken, and I would tell my friends in the article, like, you guys are nuts thinking it's, and I use phrases like Grand Bend kiteboarding right in the content. And if you use a phrase like that, that would be an ideal tag. Okay, so, and that's not to say that tags, oops, sorry, I just added a new category. No, I'll clean that up later. Tags. That's not to say that tags have to appear that way in your content, but it's better for optimization if they do. Okay, so Grand Bend kiteboarding is now tagged on here. Lake Huron kiteboarding could be part of that as well, even though the phrase isn't in there. Nash kites could be a tag because maybe I added part in there. Sloan is riding his new Nash Pivot, 2016 model, right? Then an even better tag would not just be Nash kites. You go clean that up. 2016 Nash Pivot. Nash is a brand name. Okay, you see the difference between the tags and the categories? The tags are specific to my content, and as specific as you can get, so that when people look for this stuff, they can find it based on the tags. The categories are slightly more broad-based so that people can better navigate the content you're putting into a blog. And it's important that you use these. Having the content in the page, and you're going to have way more than this. This is nothing. 2 or 3 sentences is nothing. Okay, it might seem a little odd for people if you start writing 5 screens worth of stuff on your home page or on your about page. But in a blog, it's meant to be that way. Okay, you're writing articles. You don't read magazine articles that take you like 5 seconds to read. But I see a lot of websites where people are blogging, but there's hardly anything really said in the post. They're just blogging because they think they have to. Take some time, sit down, add some content. Okay, this is all part of your final mark when it comes time to get your project graded. So that would be an example of the categories and tags. You don't have parent tags like you have parent categories. It's different. Tags are more like the hashtag part of defining what's in there, where the category is more like how you'd file it if you were to put it in the filing cabinet or something. So we're going to come back to this in a minute. Let's keep going through the slides. So we've created this page for our blog posts, and then when we update it, right, if we were to go here and go to blog, that should be on there. The couple of them that I've made are both on there. Okay, this one I made before when we were first learning about WordPress. Okay, as you can see now, instead of just uncategorized, I have these categories here. So I can click on one of these and it will show me just the posts that are in that category, which is nice. It's a nice way to give people more methods to organize or to navigate your content. Okay, so broad-based topics in which the post would fall, almost like a genre of music: rock, country, classical. Okay, history, science, that kind of stuff. Now, most websites should be more specific than that. My website is about kiteboarding in different places. So I'll have this place, that place, that place, within that place, a subcategory. Okay? Now, each post in WordPress should be filed under one of these, or possibly more if it fits into the subcategories. This aids in the navigation. Everything I've been talking about. Each category may be assigned to a category parent, or it just stands on its own. So there is a hierarchy, but there doesn't have to be. And if two categories have two different parents, they must still have different names. So you can't really have categories with the same name. So it has to be unique, and that makes sense. If you have a website and you're starting to create categories, it wouldn't make sense that two categories with the same name identified something different. It doesn't work. You don't go to a library and look stuff up in the computer under topics or subject matter and it doesn't work that way. So it's good that it stops you from naming the same category twice. Okay, this screen here shows you what it looks like. So this screen is not at an actual blog post creation page in the dashboard. When you go to posts, you can actually specifically go into the categories and the tags and manipulate them from there without ever having a post even open, which is kind of cool. So when you're in there creating post articles, posts are unique. So thinking about how your categories are set up, think about how every post should be about something different, even though it can fall into the same category. Right? You can play poster entries that are displayed in reverse order. To write a post, go here. So we've already done all this. I'm just reminding you of a few things, okay? This add new thing is very important to remember, and so is this publish button. So let's go back to another post. Let's go create a new one really quick, and I'll show you a couple of these things. So these are two posts that I've already created. Actually, I have them categorized right now. So these two here. If I go back to the dashboard and go to post, and let's say I want to make a new post. Add new, and this is like okay, something about how windy it was yesterday. I didn't get to go, but okay, I'm going to put a post in here about Port Stanley, but I'm not quite ready. Sometimes when I'm working in my business or something like that, I have my partner read it over for errors or something. I'm going to write something about the post here. I'm writing my Nash whatever. On days like this, I like to try these things. This reminds me of this, but it's all about the same kind of topic, and this could be about a category that I haven't created yet. So I would create Lake Erie. Okay, doesn't need a parent. And I only really ride in one part of Lake Erie, so I'm not going to have subcategories there. Something, something, something. You need quality content. Obviously, for the sake of this lecture, I'm not going to sit here and keep adding stuff to this page. But because I wanted someone to proof this, I'm going to save this as a draft. Now remember that you saved it as a draft, because if you go back here and go to your blog, it shouldn't be there, and it's not. Okay, it's not there because it's drafted. So this is how some of you that are on GoDaddy as your remote host can set up a site, and you can draft everything and just not publish it until you're ready, and it'll just be like a hello world blank WordPress site. You just leave it as is and just keep drafting everything, and then you publish it all at once when you're ready. So there is a bit of an issue with just half building a site while customers might be going to your page or something. So you can do that with pages or posts. I'm just showing you with a post that you can have it drafted, and then you can go back into it and add stuff to it. And there's lots of different things I showed this morning. Like sometimes when you're posting something, you might be in a hurry and you might have a picture that you just want to throw in there and you don't feel like dealing with the media library. You can do stuff like WordPress is very functional. Like if I wanted this picture in there, like I can go to the page. Okay, that's pretty big, but it'll give me some size options. Copy the image, go to the post where I'm doing it in WYSIWYG format, paste it right in there with my keyboard. And you can still click on it and go in, and you can add alternative keywords, which it came with, which is great. Okay, I'm going to add Sloan riding. Now that's not a picture of me, but let's say it was. Okay, I'm going to maybe change the alignment. I don't have to worry about the CSS. It doesn't need a caption. The caption would appear on the page. I don't need that. If I go to the text, you can see it's actually putting it in the size it came as, and I don't want it to be quite that big, so I'm going to make it about 350 by 500. And this is because I didn't put it in my media library. But you can see I still have the alternative text. It's still optimized. The only difference between doing it this way, shoot, I didn't mean to hit publish right away. It's so easy to hit publish, and you can't really unpublish something. I think what you could do is move the date forward. You can post date. Okay, so it becomes scheduled with posts, and that way, if you've accidentally published it, because I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I use the WordPress dashboard in a way that makes it easy for you guys to understand. I'm a marketing professor. I'm teaching you as marketing students. I don't want to get into all the really detailed stuff, but does anybody know how to do that? Can you redraft something after it's been published? I think the easiest way around it, if you accidentally hit publish instead of draft, is just to post date it. Okay, so when I go here to blog, it's still not going to be there. Okay, as soon as I go and as soon as I go and set that date, it will then appear. So when I go back, so that's another way to set up your content. And you can write a bunch of posts. If you're home for a week and then you're away for like a couple weeks, you can write a bunch of posts and schedule them to pop up every few days. In fact, there's programs that let you do that in Instagram too. There's a lot of cool stuff like that. So it says scheduled now because I accidentally undrafted it. If I did want to publish it today, I'd just go back to October and I'd go to the 30th and I'd put it up like, I don't know, a few minutes before now. Let's put it up at 1:49. I think that was 24-hour time, so it would have been up anyway. And then publish. When I go to the site this time, it will actually be in my blog roll. There it is. It's right on top because it's the most recent post. Now, big advantages here by using WordPress. I didn't have to go and put that there. I just created it, and then it automatically put it in that page for me. I can still go directly to the page that is the blog posting, which it also created, simply by going, where's the read more? That's not the whole post. You just click on the post. Oh yeah, you click on the post. And it takes you right to the whole post, okay? And then you go back to the previous post. You can go by category. So back in here now, I just want to check really quickly if you could do the same thing with pages. I said I was going to talk about that add new thing here. Yeah, you can schedule a page to be post dated as well. That's kind of cool. But one of the reasons I was back in here to begin with was to remind you, if you're going to create a bunch of posts at once, let's say this post is about Mitchell's Bay, okay? New category right away. This is Lake St. Clair. Lake St. Clair is not going to have subcategories either. There's only so many places to ride. And then I'm going to have a bunch of stuff about Mitchell's Bay. I'm going to have all sorts of pictures. I'm going to have a whole magazine article on this. Okay, and then I'm going to publish. And then I'm going to make another post. And this post is about where I rode the next day. Over at Cedar Point. Okay? I didn't hit add new. I just went update and then I started to write into the same post. You have to be very careful with this. As soon as you know you want to start a new post, add new. And if you've added changes to the previous post that you know you don't want, just leave the page. People make this mistake a lot. They just overwrite the page they just made. This is why it's always good to kind of create with your main navigation pages. Create them all first and then add the content. That way you never make the mistake of overwriting it. There are things about the functional nature of the WordPress dashboard that do kind of encourage people almost to make mistakes like that, but it doesn't. Just make sure you're always going to add new. That was one of the final things I wanted to talk about here before I went into the category and tag areas. And then I did go through a bunch of publish options there too. If you've taken it out of draft format, just schedule it for a future publishing date. Okay, so now we just did that. You'll see your blog entry on the top to keep the website current. Continue adding new blog entries at least once a month. Now this is WordPress suggestion, is once a month. Right? You may be involved in something where things are changing a lot more rapidly than that. Okay? You might be running a seasonal business where you're running promotions every other day in the summer, but that things are really slow in the winter. So you might post every day in the summertime and then do monthly posts in the winter just to keep in touch with your clientele before they come back next summer. Things like that. Okay, you might be running a landscaping business where things are up and down in certain seasons. You're not going to have a whole lot of posting about how cool the snow removal you did was. But if you were running a landscaping business, you wouldn't have to call this a blog. You could call it a gallery. And you could post some of your best work with your client's permission as blog posts in this gallery so that people can go and see the stuff you've done. And you mention the products you use, and you link to their company's page. You do all sorts of little stuff like that. Right, so that brings up another thing where inside of your blogs, where you have the opportunity when you're adding new stuff, and I'll jump back into one here. When I made that post where I was riding in Port Stanley, maybe I'm just showing a picture of the Nash pivot just to show the pivot. And maybe I'll say, photo courtesy of, I think this came from Kite World Magazine. Kite World Magazine. And then I'll make a link to Kite World Magazine, okay? I won't just make a link to their post about it. I'd rather people stick with my post. I'll make a link right to Kite World Magazine. Open as a new link, because I don't, people are on my site. If it's not going to be a relative link, I want it to open up as a new window so they still have my site open. You can always back browse. I don't think that changes your optimization in any way. It's just, I think it's a best practice. Now I've got a link in there. That's more optimization. Inside of the link, I can actually add a title, which is another place for keywords. So when you see this link here and you see target blank, target is a property with a value. Title is a property, and the value can be Kite World Magazine features Nash pivot. Okay, and then maybe name your blog, Mike's Kite Site. End quote. There's lots of places you can keep building in content. Where was I there? So yeah, okay. So now, tags that I showed you on the first post were something more specific, okay? Tags, unlike categories, which are just identifying my location for right now, and I might have another category where I specifically talk about performance of gear at certain locations, and I might start to break the content up even more so in this site as I add more and more articles. But mainly they're just about the location. It's inside here where, again, I can mention the 2006 Nash pivot. I can mention, maybe I have a video of me on there doing back roll kite loop, and I can go back roll kite loop instructional. And I can talk about that underneath the video. And then I can go Lake Erie, November 2015 kiteboarding, which is a heading I have in the page. Okay, which brings up another point. As you're putting this stuff together, when you have longer articles and stuff like this in blog postings, it's probably better. Well, it's not probably better. It's a known technique for better optimization to provide each location, it's a page or a post or whatever's going on within your website, a series of headings so that the search engines can sort of see how the content is organized. So if I'm talking, and in the sake of time, I'm not going to write out all this content, but if I'm talking about a day I had kiteboarding, so I could say kiteboarding, Port Stanley, I could say Sloan, so Mike Sloan, kiteboarding, Port Stanley, October 29th, 2015. This could be heading 1. And then all those little tools I showed you guys when we first learned WordPress start popping up. Well, yeah, I can just go here in the text view and add H1 and close H1. But if I've installed the Tiny MCE plugin, which is a recommended plugin from Mike, I can just highlight the text I want to make heading 1 and go in here, formats, headings, heading 1. Then I can talk about the Nash Global Kite Surfboard, because that's the board I used that day. And I'm not going to make another heading 1. I'm going to make that a secondary heading to the day of kiteboarding I had on that board. And then I could talk about the global kite surfboard strapless when I took the straps off and tried riding it a different way. So, and that becomes heading 3. I know I'm showing you a lot of stuff at once here, just in the process of showing you blogging, but this is the place in a website where you're going to constantly be adding content. You might not have the opportunity, again, this is a great example, on like a contact page to do heading 1 through 5 or something. How the heck would that work, right? But when you're blogging, you would frequently have the opportunity to use various levels of HTML headings. And if you use various levels of headings on a page, most search engines acknowledge that they will give you a better rank by organizing your content in a better way like that. I hope you guys are starting to see why just whipping up a website and coming to me at the end of week 13, and that's not what this grade is going to be about on your final project. I'm going to be looking for stuff like that. And it's not going to just be scattered about and random content like I show you in my lectures. I'm showing you how to, so you can actually go and apply these skills. So that was a little thing on headings that I don't even really have in the notes here, but I had brought it up this morning and I thought I better bring that up again. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there like a limited amount of tags if you add tags to a post?
No.
But I mean, you can, it's not better to do like 10 posts or 100. Here, there's not a limit to the amount of text you can put in a post. I wouldn't say, though, that you want to break up like an 8-page article into like 20 posts just because you had so much content. If it's all about the same topic, it should all be in that same article. And how many tags do you add to the post?
Oh, tags? Oh,
yeah.
Whatever tags are relevant. There's not really a limit to the tags. You don't really want to have more than 2 or 3 categories, but there is no limit to the tags. There are limits, though. We're going to talk about that in a second. And you'll see, as I went back in there again, too, I showed you how the tags get more specific. So these are some of the tags I put in there. I'm not going to make a category for back roll kite loops, okay? But I might be showing people how to do that in 1 or 2 of my posts, and then I would use that tag. Okay, so you can choose from tags that are already used, okay, and it'll show you the most recently used ones up at the top here. You can type in more than one tag at once and separate them by a comma and just hit add. Lots of different ways you can put these in, and they should always be, you're going to have identical tags that are used over and over again, but it should always be specific to the content that's written in here. I didn't write a lot of content in here, so I can't really demonstrate that for you visually, but they're like hashtags. So when you tag something in Twitter, and in Twitter you're only supposed to use like a few primary tags. In Instagram I like tag the living crap out of stuff just to make sure I cover it all. And I think even there I'm overdoing it. But that's what the tags are like. So like Instagram, you could probably use as many as you want, but if you have like 10 to 15 tags on a post, it's going to start to look like you're just tag sprinkling, right? Sprinkling tags everywhere just to make sure people think that it's about all those things. If it actually is, that's a different story. But search engines will look at those tags and they'll look for the key phrases in the tags in the content. If they're not actually in there, they're not going to rank you as well. I don't know how search engines are this freaking smart, but they are. And that's part of optimization is connecting all these things. But that's a really good question. How many can you have? I mean
the same like keyword, nearly the same as keywords in your test.
Yeah, to some degree. Hang on, let's see what, like Google is always a great place to look for this stuff. Well, Google, just the web. Tags are really great too. If you only want to see the articles that make a reference to the Nash pivot or make a reference to a specific move that I did or something, you can, with the widgets in WordPress, you can let people navigate by tags as well. The right way to use categories and tags. Let's see if they give you an amount in here. And there's lots of reading. This is one of our last few sit down and play around in the dashboard type of lectures. After this week, we're going to start getting into a lot more theory stuff. I'm going to give you guys a lot of lab time, and I'm going to give you stuff to look at and read. I'm not going to test you on it. Just there's tons of stuff out there that's very helpful in terms of how to properly optimize a site. Increase traffic. There are many benefits. What about duplicate content penalties?
Yeah, you should not have content that's how to categorize and tag. Utilizing categories and tags. I'm just looking for an amount in here for SEO. I'll get into that in a minute. Okay, what? I don't want to do this in the middle of the video, but there's probably a lot of ideas out there about what kind of quantities you should use in terms of tags. I just don't overdo it. Okay, now here's where I'm going to go next. So it talks about tags here, and it identifies how they're different than categories. They're more specific. They're like hashtag phrases or keyword phrases that someone might search in Google. And Martijan just said that. It's like the keyword combination of words that somebody might have used to find your post. That would be like a tag, where a category is more like a 1 or 2 word broad-based topic that the post falls into. Okay? Every post in WordPress can be filed under 1 or more tags. This aids in navigation, allows people to group it together, ungroup it. Unlike categories, tags have no hierarchy, so there's no parent-child relationship. They're just there. Okay? And they all need to be unique, like categories. So that in that way, they're similar. Assuming you're using the 2014 themes, tags are displayed now. And I'm still on the 2014 theme, even though it's 2015 now. It's soon to be 2016. It's an easy one to use in instructional videos like this. But most themes will have the tags still in the same general place. Okay, and then you can also have a widget. Almost everything would come with a widget that provides the user of your website with a tag cloud where they can pick and choose the tags. And then there's actually screens for the categories and tags where you can manage just the categories and tags outside of creating a post. And that's where we're going to go now. So once you make posts and you start adding all these categories and tags, you can go from the post menu in the dashboard to categories. And within this area, you can click on each category and individually optimize it. So the slug actually provides you with a direct URL to that category, which is going to come up again in a minute when I show you how to use that in a menu. And that should auto-generate from the name of the category. And then there's a description. So this is where when WordPress first started and these plugins weren't available, it was really hard to properly optimize a WordPress site to provide the keyword content that search engines could see, because you want to describe it in the metadata. Metadata is like that stuff in the background that the search engines can read. The title is technically part of your metadata. I mean, it's sitting back there. It appears in the title bar, but you don't really see it on the surface of the page. You can describe each category with the description, and no descriptions, just like page and post descriptions, should be longer than 155 characters. Now here, I'm going to describe, and you write it as if it's like a sentence that someone's going to read. You want to make it understandable and maybe include a call to action in a description. So you say, this category at Mike's kite site focuses on kiteboarding locations within the Grand Bend area and specific eventful, and eventful sessions had in each calendar year. Subscribe to receive updates. So give them a call to action. Now, once we install a good optimization plugin, it will be really helpful in counting the characters in descriptions like this. But not all the plugins are so rolled out or so extensive that they would actually count the characters in like the description for a category. So if you want to put a description in, you don't want it to be too long, you might actually have to jump over to Microsoft Word and use the word count tool to see how long it is. So I was deliberately trying to make that longer than 150. It might not be. Under the review tab, there's going to be a word count there. It will count the characters. So it's 169, okay? So let's get that down a little smaller. So probably doesn't have to say Mike's Kite site, although I like the name of my site in there. And killer sessions in the area, not in each calendar year. I didn't even have the word year in there anyway. Killer sessions in the area. 154. Okay, that's pretty darn close. So I'll use that at 154 characters. There are many that are arguing now that it should be under 130 because one of the major search engines, I think, started limiting it to 130 in recent time. But most of what I'm reading still says that 155 is acceptable for descriptions. So you update it, and now, in addition to having the content in the post with keywords in the actual post and whatever keywords you put in the title of the post, you also have the categories that are helping explain to the search engines what's inside of that. You have the specific tags that are very useful in terms of optimization because search engines are looking at those as well. And you've gone and described the actual category associated with that post. Anywhere you can have text-based content that the search engines will look at, you want to have it filled in. By leaving stuff blank, you're just cheating yourself. Okay? And you also don't want to just put random crap in there. You want it all to connect directly to what the content is actually about. This is why I got upset with that friend of mine. He runs a fire suppression business, and I set him up on WordPress, and he started adding all this stuff about his kid's ski club, and he had a video of his kid kiteboarding, and he's got like the one charity thing that he's part of, and that's good to show that a business might be part of that, but it really wasn't connected to the business at all. It's totally random content that is out of place with the main focus of his website. You don't read books that like randomly throw stuff in the middle of the book that has nothing to do with the plot. Well, actually you do probably, but let's say you're reading a book and then in the middle of the book there were 5 pages stuck in there from another book. That would make no sense. And search engines don't like that either. They like consistency. They like constant updates, and they like everything to be described. So when I go into your final project website, without even going into each category, I should see a nice looking description here. And I should see a bunch of categories related to the posts that you've made. And I should see at least 4 or 5 or 10 posts. And maybe they're not part of a blog. Maybe they're part of a news update. Maybe they're part of a contest. Maybe they're part of some kind of like community forum where you're going out and interviewing people each week about different things and then putting the highlights in a blog roll. You need to be putting content up there. When you go to tags, it's the same thing. I can see tags. Tags will have a URL in your site as well, and it'll tell you how many times they've been used. And if I click on a tag to edit, I can also add a description to that tag. So anywhere you can put this stuff, you put stuff in. And now we're going to throw in a plugin to show you how this starts to enhance our ability to continue to optimize stuff. So as soon as you know you're going to launch a site, you should not be doing this without an SEO plugin. The most popular and most user-friendly ones that are out there are by a guy named Yoast. Sounds like toast, but with a Y. If you search Yoast SEO, the all-in-one SEO is pretty good, but this seems to be the one a lot of people are using now. If you click install now, you shouldn't have any issues with this unless you have a Mac and you haven't done those security protocol changes on your final project folder. You'd want to do that. I don't have those problems here, so I can activate the plugin. As soon as the plugin is activated, like I've discussed with a variety of plugins, you never know what's really going to come out. This one has its own menu. Some plugins are then built into other menus. Some plugins, you don't see them anywhere. You have to go to the description and figure out how you can use it. SEO by Yoast has its own menu, okay? And we're going to have a whole lecture about this later. I'm not going to get into this in detail now. I'm just going to go right back to where I was to show you the difference. Tags, okay? I'm going to click on one of these. So 2016 Nash Pivot. Now, all of a sudden, I have a title section, a description, a meta description used as the archive for this item, and a canonical, which is the link that will directly take people to this item. Or to this tag, sorry. So inside of a site, if I go to, for example, I'm going to come back to this in a second. If I go here and click view, just like I view a page, it'll show me all of the posts that mention this tag. And whatever comes up in the browser is the actual URL that people can use to directly access the collection of posts that show that tag. If I take that and I go back to my dashboard and back to that tag area. And I could do that without going there and seeing it in the address bar. Once you see it once or twice, you know how it's set up. I can put that down here for my canonical, and then this is better for search engines too, to provide a fixed location where this information is always going to be. Your description here is used for the meta description to archive this item. It might not be as long as the one you put up here. You could maybe put a shorter one there. The SEO title is kind of like a page title, but it's for the tag. It's for the actual tag. So that would be pretty close to what the tag says. Now, I'm a little hazy from month to month, term to term on how all this stuff is working. So I typically go to his actual blog, and he talks about how to use his plugins and what the best way is to do it. Because you'll see, as soon as you plug it in there, everything we go to change around now, there's going to be all these extra fields, okay? And he's got this whole color coding system when you put the stuff on pages and posts. It's pretty cool. So that's a plugin I would put in there. We'll get more into that later. What I was going to end with was to show you, you know how I got into the links, how when you go into these tags, it had that little slug section. So as soon as you add a tag, it gives you an extension where if you go to your domain or URL /tags, you could then go / whatever the tag is, and that will take you to everything that's in that tag. You can do the same thing with categories. So adding tags, we already did all this. Tag slug, that's what I'm talking about right now, okay? And then describe your tag, adding new tags. Okay, we've tried all this stuff. So I'm back now to menus to end this lecture, which we have already done. There's only a few slides left here. Okay, I say if your theme supports it. Like almost every theme allows you to make a custom menu. Some themes are really rigid or strict in terms of how they're set up because the menu is part of the way the theme works and they don't let you change it around. But most themes let you change a menu. And when you get most themes, the way it's set up is not the way it's set up now, because in one of my previous lectures, we already went into menus and set up a custom menu. Most of the time when you get a new theme, nothing is here. It's just blank. And by default, it's automatically just adding every page you create to your menu. It doesn't put posts in there. And it just adds the page in the order that you create them. There's no way to reorder it unless you make your own menu. So I'm encouraging you guys to always set up your own menu the way you want it. And this is done in appearance menus. And one of your classmates actually showed me, if you go into customize, and this is new in the latest version of WordPress, just in the last few months. If you go to menus in here, you can add menus from here, and you can build and edit your menus in here pretty much the same way. Okay, I'm very used to the menu functionality from the appearance menu, so I'm going to go back in there. And from here, I've already gone in, menus, we're there. Okay, I've already gone in and created this custom menu. What I want to do now, because I have a custom menu, is I want to let people, when they click on the blog, it just goes to the blog page, but when they drop down, I want to allow them to go to the actual specific categories that I've set up within my blog as as child navigation items to the main blog. And this is really easy, okay? So if you go into posts and you go to categories, the categories will have a slug. So if you go to your domain /category and then go to that slug, it should show that category. Okay, there's your slug right there. So that should come at the end of the URL. So if you're not sure what it is, you can always just click view and it says category and then it shows the category. You can take that link and you can do, I'm only going to do one, but you can see where I'm going with this. You could put all of your main categories, not your subcategories maybe, but allow people to navigate your blog, not just from the widgets, not just from the blog itself, but from the main menu too. It's always good to give people lots of places to do things. So when I go in there, instead of taking a page that I've created, which is pretty much all that's available in there, I'm going to go to posts, and instead of taking a post that's created and making that, you can make a post a main menu item as well. I'm going to go to custom link, and I'm going to put in the URL. It takes me directly to that category, and then I'm going to call it GB kiting. Okay, Grand Bend kiting. It's making it a little shorter. I'm going to add it to the menu, and then I'm going to very simply take it, put it under blog, drag it over a little bit, make it a child item, and now when I save the menu and go to the site to view it, when I highlight my blog, it's going to give me a bunch of child items that aren't actually pages or posts. But you can use that link functionality in your WordPress site to direct people to just a category. There's all different ways you can set up and organize the content in a WordPress site that would have been a major pain in the butt for you if you were doing this in HTML. So that was one of the things I wanted to show you after going through all this blogging stuff, to show you how you can use these as actual links. And that's why I reviewed menu functionality again at the end of this lecture. But we're not going to go through all these slides per se. They're kind of repeat slides from a previous lecture. It's good review for you guys. I know some of you didn't get that part on the test. So you can go back through these slides in week 8. They're available in FOL. And next time we're going to start customizing themes, customizing CSS. We're going to actually start really getting into some technical stuff. In the meantime, what I'd like to see happen is I'd like to see you guys make a decision about how you want to set up your final project site and then set it up. Okay, that's why today at the end of class or at the end of this lecture, or if you're watching this and you're in the online course, whenever I made the due date, I want you to actually go set it up and then take a screenshot to show me that you've set it up. So as I mentioned already, if you haven't decided whether or not you're going to use GoDaddy, I still want you to get the 2% for this assignment. So what I would do is go into XAMPP, set up a new database, download WordPress, do a new install, and then you take a picture of that. So if I was to show you an example of this, do not want to see this in yours, but I would take just a shot of the site in the actual browser so that I could still see the address bar. Okay, but yours wouldn't say WordPress because you've made a new folder for your final project, and it might say whatever the final project is about. If you don't even know what it's about yet, just call it final project. And no, you can't change the name of that folder later on. Well, you can. Then you have to go into XAMPP and change around the connections to the folder in the database, which I can do for you. I just don't see any point. Like, I'm not going to grade it down if it's just called final project. I'm totally fine with that. If you go to GoDaddy and you choose remote hosting as your method to get this project done, you would have a domain name in here. And if you didn't know which domain name you were going to pick, I showed you in lecture on Wednesday how to. Well, that's that video that's on FOL. So if you're not sure what to do here, I'm giving you a bunch of time before the end of class. You can go in here and this 2% exercise video, and this might look a little different if you're in the online course, but this shows you what I'm looking for this week's exercise. All right? That's a screenshot. That's it. And at the very end of the video, I show you the 2 examples of the screenshot. So for you guys in here today, you go to the Dropbox, put it in. I'm done with the lecture because I don't want to keep talking about different due dates. It's going to be different for everybody watching this.